Hi everyone, I'm Betty Russo. I am here today with Jackie from Jackie's Breads and Bakes, and we're actually at Jackie's home where she runs her business. So she's going to tell us all about that. I'm really excited. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for
Jackie is also our Oakland Chamber of Commerce Restaurant of the Month. So congrats.
Thank you so much.
So let's get into it. Jackie, can you share the story about how you started your business and what inspired you?
Absolutely. So I've always really enjoyed baking. As I got older, had jobs, children, I really kind of let that fall aside, and I didn't get to do that as often. And then in 2020, that pandemic hit and I was home full time with both of my children. And during nap times and downtime, I wanted to fill our time with whatever we could to keep things entertaining. So my daughter and I would start baking. She slowly lost interest. I gained more interest.
Okay.
And she was only 3 at the time. I saw the sourdough craze online. I was a little intimidated by it, but ultimately, I decided, you know what, I'm going to take a stab at this and try it out, see what happens. So I made my own starter from scratch. This is my starter right here. His name is John Doe.
Okay.
And I used that starter to create a couple loaves of bread in the first couple. They were great, but they were not like what you envision with sourdough. So I just kept practicing, and every time I practiced, because we had so much bread at that point, I started giving it out to friends. Mm-hmm. They all kept telling me, you should sell your bread. But in the state of New Jersey, I could not sell my bread because the cottage laws did not exist yet.
Okay, cottage laws. Explain that to me.
So cottage laws are what allows bakers who bake from home to sell their goods. Okay. So in the state of New Jersey, we did not have a set standard for, or a set law for selling food from home. I wanted to make sure that whatever I was going to be doing was going to be legal. So I looked into it and realized at that time I could not do that. Mm-hmm. So I unfortunately told all of my friends, sorry guys, you're just going to have to accept gifts.
That works. I'm sure
they
were very
not
happy.
Complaining.
Right.
So then in 2021, in October, New Jersey decided that they were going to pass the cottage food law.
Awesome.
And at that point, I was really getting to a spot where I was very happy with what I was creating. And with the encouragement of my husband, the support of my family and my friends, we all thought maybe I should do this. I got my cottage license and I started selling bread.
Awesome. Congrats.
Thank you.
So you mentioned the sourdough craze.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Everybody was stuck at home. A lot of people decided to start baking, getting in the kitchen, getting hands-on with things at home. And sourdough was one of those things that really took off, and people really enjoyed making bread. It's very therapeutic. I decided to, not out of necessity, but out of I need a challenge, I started doing the same.
And how does sourdough compare to other breads? And what are I know there's health benefits to choosing sourdough.
Yes. So first off, making my own bread means limited ingredients. You're not getting all the filler. So with sourdough, you're getting very straightforward bread. The two big things with sourdough are, first off, you're not using commercial yeast. So when you're not using commercial yeast, you still need to leaven your bread, which means make it rise. And the starter here, this is my yeast. This is a culture that's created from flour and water and natural yeast from the environment. And basically, I have to feed this every single day. And when I feed it, what happens is the yeast and the bacteria that live in the starter eat the flour and they convert it into yeast.
Wow.
And so that yeast is what is
been
used. Exactly. It's crazy. It's a science lesson in itself.
Right. It's awesome.
Yes. So the sourdough culture is what I use to leaven my bread or make it rise. So the difference also between this bread versus the bread that you get at the supermarket is that there's bacteria and microbes in the starter that go into the bread, which help with gut health. Essentially, it's fermentation, just like beer or when you're fermenting pickles or sauerkraut, kind of things like that. So that is good for, you know, people who have gluten sensitivities and gluten intolerance, because this helps to kind of even out some of the gut bacteria versus the commercial yeast, which is not naturally created the way this is.
And I just learned that recently. That's fantastic. I love that.
Yes.
So talk a little bit more about the ingredients that you're using. Sure. How are you choosing what you're putting into? And I know it's limited ingredients, but how are you choosing what exactly you're using?
So after doing a lot of research, I was initially interested in trying to keep things as organic as possible. But what happens is organic flour especially is so it's so raw and so clean that it actually doesn't have some of the yeast in it the natural yeast that you need for really good bread. Okay. So what I do is I use King Arthur flour exclusively. They have a whole barrage of different types of flours, from rye, pumpernickel, whole wheat, whole grain, semolina, all these different things. So I use the King Arthur bread flour in most of all of my breads. And then when a different type of bread requires a different type of flour, I use the King Arthur flour for that going into it.
I understand the King Arthur is the best that you can use.
One of the absolute tops in the industry. Pretty much, if you go to the grocery store, you're going to see a couple of different brands. King Arthur is always going to be there. It's going to be a little bit more expensive, but it is a top quality flour. They're based in Vermont, and everything is very mom and pop. They're not commercially owned. I feel good about using their product because it's very wholesome.
Okay.
And then when it comes down to the other ingredients, any additives, so if I'm using agave nectar or if I'm using sugar, I do try to use organic for all of that stuff.
Awesome. Tell me about your client base. Who comes to you to order your bread, and do you have repeat customers? I would imagine so.
Yes. So absolutely everybody loves my bread.
Yes.
I have not had anybody who has told me that they don't like my bread. So my client base is really interesting. It's everybody, from men, women, children. Everybody is interested. Kids tend to absolutely love my regular all white bread. I mean, what kid doesn't love bread?
Exactly.
I know with my children, they'll eat anything without additives in it, like any kind of like cranberries or raisins. They won't eat any of that, but they love all the rest of the bread. It was funny when I first started selling the bread, I was like, oh, this is going to be a big hit with women, because I'm a woman. I love bread. I know how many women that love my bread. So this is going to be really big with like the Oakland moms. And surprisingly, once the Oakland moms started buying the bread, their husbands became extremely addicted to the bread.
Yes. Oh, yes. I can see that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So I'm really surprised at how many men reach out to me to buy bread for themselves, and how many men use my bread in their sandwiches to go to work with. So yeah, it's a really interesting mix.
That's awesome.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, it's really fun, and like you never know who's showing up at your front door when they're coming to buy your bread.
And speaking of that, since you do not have a storefront, how does the ordering process work?
I rely exclusively on social media
that's amazing.
and word of mouth, because I have not had to do any paying into major advertising or anything like that. It's just there's been such a great communication throughout town and throughout the whole Flow area, even as far as Ringwood. I've had people out in Hackettstown come up to buy my bread.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, so it's you just go on Facebook or Instagram on either of those platforms, and you can send me a direct message. If you don't have either of those platforms, I do have a website, and it has my phone number. You can always send me a text message or an email through that, and I will respond as quickly as possible.
Awesome. So tell me about like your process as far as what you offer. I believe you have like a menu that changes weekly.
Yes. So
Okay.
every week, I try to do it on Thursday mornings. I release a menu for the week after. That menu just kind of keeps me in check because then I'm not making 150 different breads every day. So what I'll do is like 3 or 4 different types of bread 3 days a week on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And then you would pick off of the menu for those. If anybody is looking for something different or a specific bread, I always try to accommodate that as well.
Awesome.
But yeah, so I have bread, cookies, and pretzels. Those are my 3 big focuses.
Ooh.
Clearly the breads are my biggest seller, but I do, sometimes on Fridays, I'll make sourdough pretzels. They are a huge hit, again, with everybody. You'll usually see those at the vendor fairs if I'm at a vendor fair. And then more recently, I've been adding a bigger variety of cookies to my repertoire. So I do sourdough chocolate chip cookies and sourdough snickerdoodle cookies. And they are huge sellers. Once you've tried them, you really don't want to go back
There's
to regular
no turning
cookies.
back. There's no turning back.
No, they're just so unique.
All right, awesome. So Jackie, tell us where people can find you. I know social media and your website, but like what is your name? Is it Jackie's Breads?
Jackie's Breads and Bakes.
And Bakes.
Yes,
that's
so
important.
It's Jackie's Breads and Bakes.
And is that also, I would imagine, the name of your website?
Yes, it's jackiesbreadsandbakes.com.
Is there anything that we forgot to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we did pretty good job covering. I have a couple new things coming out for the fall, so stay tuned for those on my fall menus.
Listen, you have to just find Jackie online on Instagram, Facebook, or go onto her website. Order your bread. You post your menu right on social media, so it's easy to find. Order straight from Jackie. I recommend it. The smell in here is incredible.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you for joining us. And thank you, Jackie.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.